ain't that you can't see, cause you can find it, homes, it's that you don't want to. You cope by putting the blinders on. I've been trying to find some kind of way, but I've kind of known that y'all.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we'll be talking about WWE's Hell in a Cell pay-per-view / premium live event emanating from Chicago, Illinois on June 5th, 2022. Alright, so let's get right into the controversy. Cody Rhodes had suffered a torn pec. Apparently it was torn while he was working out, or it was torn on Raw, one of the two, but he could not fulfill his obligations in a live event on Saturday night. He was filled in by Drew McIntyre. So he did decide to wrestle on this show. So he did compete with a torn pectoral muscle, and it was absolutely gnarly. It was purple as all get out. It was wild. It was woolly. It was ugly. It was crazy. Now, before we get into the match, let's talk about the ethics of this. Now, there's a lot of concern trolling by a lot of the wrestling media, especially how could the doctors let him do this? Why didn't the doctors stop this? Why didn't Vince stop this? WWE is a publicly traded company worth billions of dollars. You could just swap Cody out with Drew McIntyre or anybody else, literally anyone, to complete this feud, or at least do this match, or just change the match and save the match until Cody comes back. There was a lot of things being said. And there is a conversation to be had about the ethics of letting Cody go forward. Medically, it doesn't make much sense. The guy is probably in a lot of pain. But I think that's really the threat, is the pain. And look, here's the thing. He had already torn the pec. It was already down bad. At that point, what more could he do to the pec? Not much, really, right? So if it was already completely torn and purple and swollen as it was, it looked like it was as bad as it was going to get. At that point, if you look at that thing and you say, it ain't going to get worse than that. It's just pain at this point. And Cody says, look, I can deal with the pain. Then you just kind of like, oh, all right, go for it. Still, would you let him do it? I don't know. It's one of those ethical gray areas where you could just say, my body, my choice. He is an independent contractor. He can do whatever he wants. If he doesn't want to perform with a torn pec, doesn't have to. WWE could have traded out something, could have done anything. They could have still delivered the Hell in a Cell match. They sort of had to change Cody out. They could have did a angle that took Cody out of the match. They could have made the match a squash match, which is what I thought they were going to do. And probably would have been the smarter decision, is to let one of the other matches go a little bit longer, or plug in a fill-in match just so Cody can get some extra time and you can fill some extra time in the building. And then what you would do at that point is you have something big happen and Cody wins the match pretty quickly without taking too many bumps, without hurting himself. To me, that's what I thought when I heard Cody Rhodes is going to wrestle with a torn pectoral muscle. Because I was like, that sounds ludicrous. They wouldn't do that. And then they did do it. And then he worked like 20 minutes with a torn pec. Taking bumps with it. Running it into the ring post. He got stabbed in the chest directly with a kendo stick. And you could see it swelling underneath. It was bad. At the same time, it was as bad as it was going to get. And a lot of people was like, it's so uncomfortable. I'm like, I don't know if it was uncomfortable. He's in legitimate pain. That's for sure. But to me, it wasn't worse than all of these crazy bloodbaths that people give themselves, because, your blood it's a little bit different. I assume that everything hurts. I'm not one of these people that have these ideas that, unless you completely miss something, anytime you get slammed, it hurts. It sucks. You don't get used to falling. It hurts every single time. So it's all pain all the time. And like I just said, Cody was going to hurt anyway. It's not like he was going to not work and the pain was going to go away. It was probably, I'll take a painkiller and I'll work through it. And that's probably what he did, but it wasn't the smart thing to do. Vince and WWE should not have let him go through with it. Personally, I think just because the company is publicly traded, they should not have let him go through with it. They should have pulled him because of that, and because of is it a medical violation? Not really. Even WWE could even say that they sweetened it a little bit by saying that it was worse than it really was. We don't know. Like, we don't have Cody's medical records, but am I assuming that it's as bad as they said? Yes. So we can assume that it was correct and it was as bad as they said it was. Some people were saying, oh, it's obviously a work. Look, not everything is a work. The guy was seemingly in a lot of pain. That said, they could be sweetening it, but which means he probably does have a torn pec, but it probably wasn't that bad. Or it was worse than they said it was. It was torn completely off the bone and it wasn't going to get any worse. Either way, they made a decision, and their medical team made the decision to allow Cody Rhodes to wrestle with a torn pec. I just don't see why they would do it. And guys have been pulled for less. People have been pulled for less injuries than what Cody has suffered. People have torn quads in the middle of the match and completed it. But that was the interesting thing about this to me. Is that there was a lot of WWE fans that were sort of giving the wrestling media the riot act. Like, as the match continued to go on, they continued to complain. Oh, this is the most unethical thing WWE has done in a long time. This is horrible, yada, yada, yada. And people were saying, look, other athletes play injured all the time. And I was like, that's true. Now ain't really the time to make that argument, but that's true. I mean, players do play hurt. And I started getting a lesson on all of these athletes, especially hockey players, that play with broken ribs. And there have been hockey players that have played full games with torn pecs and torn the pec before the game. So it's almost the exact same situation as Cody. And people have played with the flu. Like, people have been pulled for having the flu, but people have also played through the flu. And, you learn all this kind of stuff, and you're really kind of on that edge because you're like, as an athlete, some athletes play through it. Some athletes do play through serious injuries that they would back out of. So then at that point, I made the argument and I started thinking about it, and I say to myself, all right, let's say you're going to allow a wrestler to wrestle through a torn pectoral muscle. You're going to be okay with it. Why fucking Hell in a Cell? SummerSlam, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania. Okay, we'll let the guy wrestle with a torn pec at WrestleMania because it's the biggest match of the night, big main event, biggest night of the year. Okay, nothing else is going to top this. But Cody probably already sees that he's gone for 6 months already, 6 to 9 months already, and says, fuck it, Hell in a Cell, let's do it. My first pay-per-view main event for WWE, let's do it. And I gotta say, it was a gutsy performance, one hell of a performance. Knowing that Cody was legitimately injured going into the match added a lot of drama to the match. And I think it added a little too much drama. Like, it made it a masterful performance for Cody, but at the same time, it was too much. It was okay. Because every big move that occurred, we thought, all right, it was over, And I think that was their mentality in going into the match, was saying, all right, we know that Cody's pec is torn, but every time they do something big, a crossroads, pedigree, a stomp, it's like, okay, it's finally over. And they would not let it be over. Even the running powerbomb through the table, I was like, my God, bro. It wasn't quite, Foley flying off the top of the cell. It wasn't quite that bad. That match continued, by the way. A lot of people are, this is the damnedest ethical violation of WWE. Like, a guy got thrown off the top of the cell once in the middle of the match, fell through the table, continued the match. Like, we could have stopped the match after he fell off the table, the damn cell the first time. He fell through it again and continued the match. So if you have any ethical qualms about WWE, look at Mick Foley, right? You talk about playing through the pain. He had a tooth stuck through his knee. A tooth stuck through his nose, and various internal injuries. He was coughing up blood. He doesn't even really remember the second fall because he was concussed. That dude was hurt. That dude was fucked up. So there was people, who, again, it was uncomfortable because of the discoloration, but we've seen worse when it comes to this Hell in a Cell match. We've seen worse. And then because the match is PG, that he wasn't taking any super big bumps. He wasn't falling off the cage or anything like that. So I would agree with the concerned trolls and say that Cody should have been pulled. At the same time, his body, his choice. And if he wanted to do it, and only if he signed like a waiver or something like that, go for it. Whatever. The guy's not, he's not dead or dying. Chadwick Boseman had cancer when he was in some of these movies. Sometimes guys just want to get it done. We turn a blind eye to a lot of things. And I remember watching a movie and I saw Chadwick Boseman. And I was like, thinking about when this movie would have been shot. And I was like, wait a minute. He probably had cancer during this movie. And sure enough, he did. I forget what the movie is called. But he actually had cancer while he was filming that movie. He was suffering from cancer. So it's not like, it's a WWE only thing. It happens. People push through things that would normally sit a normal person down, and that's wild shit to think about, but it's real. And, I just kind of wanted to spend the first couple of minutes talking about the ethics of doing so, of letting this happen, of WWE's medical team basically saying, you know what, Cody's going to do what Cody do, but I still think WWE should have kept it short. They should have 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I know it would have been screwing the audience, but you got to finish the story. If you want to finish the story, go ahead, finish the story. But for fuck's sake, this match was too long. For that injury and for the discomfort that the audience was feeling at first. Now, some people are like, oh, it was the first 15 minutes. Bodyslam.net. It was the first 15 minutes of the match. They were dead silent. I'm like, not really. You're projecting your discomfort onto the rest of the fans. I think mostly it was silent because the match was starting slow. The match was starting slow. They weren't really doing much of anything. And then, as the match warmed up, they just bought right in. Most people just kind of assumed Cody was okay because of his injury, and they said, okay, well, we know that he's hurt, but he's still here, let's give him some love. So they did. And by the time the match really got started, there was the crowd was creepily quiet, so now there was no such thing. It took a while. But let's talk about this match now, finally. Seth Rollins comes out in polka dots. A little unknown fact. Dusty Rhodes actually wore polka dots before he came to WWE. He wore polka dots in 1977. There's a picture out there. I forget who had it. But I think that's where Vince got the idea for the polka dots from. Is that he had wore polka dots somewhere else. I think it was in Florida. Dusty had wore polka dots. And Vince maybe have seen that picture and then decided to bring that look back. But that's a little known thing. But, that was the point of Seth Rollins wearing the polka dots, obviously, is to taunt Cody. He should have dressed like Stardust if he really wanted to taunt Cody. The match was just insane. It was an insane match, all kind of crazy bumps. The bull rope spot in the middle of the match, I thought was specifically very good. And I think that shouldn't have been the way to get around the nature of the injury. Is for Cody to challenge Seth Rollins to basically a bull rope match inside the Hell in a Cell, where he would, early into the match, maybe 2 or 3 seconds into the match, he would throw a bull rope and he would tie his good arm around it, and that's how they would do the match, so that Cody wouldn't have to take any huge bumps, and they could use the cowbell and all that kind of stuff, wrap each other up and that kind of stuff. That would have been a good way of limiting Cody's bumps, turning it into a street fight. Jerry King Lawler, before the show, and I want to add this to the whole Cody's, he told a story about Josh, I think it was Josh LeDuc, who tore his bicep right before a match, went in there and fought anyway. And I'm like, man, wrestlers are some crazy motherfuckers, man. Boxing, MMA, whatever, you get a cut above the yardie ready to pull the fight, Wrestling, man, you got to be damn near dead. You got to have a bullet wound through the chest in order for them to stop it. WWE, the show must go on ethos sometimes goes too far. This is the very nature of the show must go on. WWE's the show must go on ethos is real. It's real, and Cody knows it. It's not like he would have missed anything. It'd have been not being able to complete this feud, but it would have been something else. Anyway, let's get back into this match. Seth Rollins does a really good job of trolling Cody and teasing Cody, and he put on the nightmare jacket and made fun of him. It was a good match. Overall, really good match. Had a lot of fun with it. I'm just not one of these aunties that was, oh my God, what is going on with Cody? And wanted to pinch his cheeks and ice him down and ask him if he's okay and why Big Bad Vince is letting you do this and all this kind of stuff. That's just not me. I do believe Vince McMahon should have stopped it. Just like if it was a concussion or something like that, he should have pulled Cody and just had another match as the main event and just disappointed those people and said, hey, look, tough luck. That's what I would have done. But at the same time, WWE's ethos is get the match in the ring. That's Vince's thing. It's always been Vince's thing. Get the match in the ring. If you can get it in the ring, get it in the ring. And they probably definitely consulted their medical team. And I know WWE's medical team can be questionable because they are not incentivized to pull a wrestler. There should have been a third-party medical team, and maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was a third-party medical team that said it was okay. I'm pretty sure Cody has his own medical team. I mean, of course he does. There's always that schism. I think Charlotte went through this, what was this, last year, where WWE's medical team said she was pregnant, and she went to her own personal doctor and was like, no, she's not pregnant. But she had missed WrestleMania anyway, and she had an attitude about it. That kind of shit is real, Maybe WWE in these situations needs to consult a third party and need to be told to consult a third party. And it's hard to tell though, because I'm also all for WWE self-regulating. I don't think that we need too many grannies and aunties sitting on their couch playing doctor, telling guys what they can and can't do. Especially in a situation where Cody can only make it. He can only make it worse if it can be worse. Now he could also tear another pec or tear something else trying to protect his pec, and it can always make it worse. Make something else worse. He could give himself a concussion trying to protect his pec or something like that, which is what I would consider. But something with a concussion could also be made worse. As far as you losing your equilibrium, you could fall off the top rope, you could stumble, drop somebody or something like that. So I'm not really a big fan generally of wrestlers wrestling injured. That's like being on drugs or being drunk. It could cause other problems. But if you didn't let wrestlers wrestle injured, nobody fucking work, because everybody is wrestling injured all the time. So the match was great, by the way. Match was fantastic. All right, first match on the show, Raw Women's title, the best match on the show. Bianca Belair, Becky Lynch, Asuka. This match fucking ruled. My hatred of triple threat matches is legendary at this point. I absolutely fucking hate triple threat matches. But sometimes they are really good. Now, what I really hate about the triple threat match is the very cliche finish. And this one had a cliche finish, where one person hits a move, then the other guy comes in, throws you out of the ring, and steals your pin. It happens literally every fucking time in WWE. Except for that one time when Roman stacked two dudes on top of each other. That was the only time that somebody didn't get their pin stolen. But this match ruled. For starters, Bianca Belair came out there in trunks. Great look. All right, it's not like she's got like a wide ass or anything like that, but she just looks so much better in trunks. Jesus, so for some reason, they look more professional. She looks more like a wrestler in trunks. She also had that Minnie Mouse bow tie in her head, which I thought was just adorable. It's just cute. The Becky Lynch mid-rope combo, where she put Bianca Belair in the middle of the ropes, and she kind of hit some strikes, which included a back kick and an uppercut and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. But they ain't had nothing on the flurry of strikes where that Asuka unleashed later on. And let me tell you, her spinning back fist blows the fucking water out of Eddie Kingston's. Eddie Kingston's spinning back fist looks like shit. Chris Jericho's spinning back elbow looks like shit in comparison to that thing that Asuka was throwing around. That thing looked like it would literally like cut your head in half. It was wild. That was a wild joint. Bianca did like a marching suplex where she snatched, I think it was Becky Lynch up, and was like doing like a march, and then I was like, wow, like this was crazy. And then you get, of course, a bunch of triple threat spots where I think the iconoclasm off the top rope onto Bianca when she was on the mat. Really good match. Great stuff. The pin comes from the manhandle slam with Becky Lynch. Bianca Belair throws her outside the ring, steals the pin. Asuka is pinned again. That sucks, but to be expected, because I don't think this Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair thing is over. They're probably going to have some kind of gimmick match at Money in the Bank to keep Becky Lynch out of the Money in the Bank match. Okay, that sucks for Asuka. Now, somebody did say something I thought was very interesting in terms of Asuka. That Asuka has been sort of the same character for like the last 2 or 3 years, maybe even longer. And that maybe it's time for a character switch. That, maybe it's time for her to change her look or something. And I think that, going away for a long time, that was a perfect time to do that. It was a perfect time to debut her as something different. And I agree. I think Asuka's been doing the Empress of Tomorrow thing for a long time. And I think it's time to change things up. Like, I like business suit Asuka that she would break out in NXT. Maybe it's time to, dabble a little bit into that, where she kind of dresses how she would normally dress and, approaches the business a little bit differently. Time to reinvent Asuka a little bit. And I think now that she's kind of going to be out of the title picture, now is the perfect time to do that, because, the best time to do it would have been when she was hurt, was to come up with a new character for her. But now she's going to get pushed down the card, apparently. Now is another good time to repackage Asuka. And I do think it's been overdue. And I think they should have done it when she was hurt. All right. So we got Hurt Business stuff. Cedric Alexander comes out there to strategize with MVP and Amos. MVP says that Cedric Alexander never gets the job done. Therefore, there will be no more association between the two of them. There will be no more Hurt Business, and that he should leave them alone. Then Amos, you need to get out of here. And so Cedric Alexander left. And when he left, I was like, oh, Cedric Alexander is going to interfere in this match and help Lashley. And that's exactly what happened. MVP and Amos lose to Lashley. I wrote down that a giant should never need a 2-on-1 advantage. And that's true. I get it that the feud is mostly MVP and Lashley now. So it's kind of like MVP needs a 2-on-1 advantage. Okay, fine. But still not thrilled by the whole 2-on-1 thing. The match was what it was. Cedric Alexander jumped in. He did not make any contact with Amos. Amos saw him first and grabbed him out of the air and then pitched him over the top rope. That left that caused a distraction, so Lashley speared Amos. After he got up from spearing Amos, MVP went for the Yakuza kick. Lashley ducked it from the ropes. MVP's foot was stuck over the top ropes. That opened him up to the Hurt Lock. MVP submits to the Hurt Lock. A very logical finish. I love the finish. Great fucking finish. So after the match, Lashley goes out into the crowd. He's doing the waist thing for the title. He even snatches a replica belt from one of the fans and is pointing and shaking it in the air, and the crowd is going nuts. They definitely want Bobo in the title picture, and I do too. Roman Reigns and Lashley is overdue. We ready for it. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. He did the Hurt Business. He did the WrestleMania 37. He did the WrestleMania 38. He did the Hell in a Cell. Bob Lashley should be the WWE champion right now. He should be wrestling Roman Reigns. He should be the top guy in WWE. He's 45 years old. You don't got him a lot of time left on him. Let's fucking go. Next, Lashley and Cedric Alexander. They have a conversation about Cedric Alexander's involvement in Bobby Lashley's match. To which Cedric Alexander says, look, that wasn't for you. That was for me. I'm tired of being treated like an unwanted toy around here. And I gotta stand up for myself. I gotta learn how to survive on my own, stand on my own 2 feet. And Bobby Lashley, pat him on the shoulder and says, that's good. That's great. Young brother, I am so proud of you. Yes, you do have to learn how to take care of yourself around here. But never interfere in one of my matches again. And Cedric was like, all right. And they kind of peacefully separated. But the hope is there. I'm smiling off the base of the hope that we could get the Hurt Business back as baby faces. It might just be the 2 of them because Shelton Benjamin is hurt. I know one of the subscribers asked me, like, what happened to Shelton Benjamin? He's injured currently. But a 2-man Hurt Business, I like it. I like it a lot. Cedric Alexander and Lashley, Speed and Power, a Power and Glory 2.0. I'm all about that. Cedric Alexander is too talented to be in catering. There's a lot of guys that are too talented to be sitting in catering. So this is good. Maybe it'll lead to something for Cedric Alexander. Maybe it'll bleed over into a Cedric Alexander MVP feud, and he'll just be being fed to Amos 100 times. But who knows? Hopefully, Cedric Alexander can get on TV. He got on pay-per-view and almost never gets on TV. Interesting. Third match on the show, Ezekiel is defeated by Kevin Owens. Pretty standard match. Kevin Owens wins clean with a stunner. And no cheating. Kevin Owens continuously called him a liar. Wrestled him pretty viciously. I wrote down Ezekiel is a better wrestler than Elias. Because Elias wasn't all that good. But Ezekiel is not bad. He ain't great. But he ain't bad. His flying elbow smash is fantastic, though. His flying elbow smash is fantastic. I love that flying elbow smash from Ezekiel. It's a great move. But there was not much to this match. It was a standard match. Pretty good. Kevin Owens wins. No cheating. No, nothing underhanded. He just won. We need to do something about that. Bad guys just winning clean. I'm not thrilled with that. Not a big fan, honestly. That's Japanese style shit. We should use, guys, especially a guy like Ezekiel who is getting some momentum. Why kill his momentum by having him get beat clean in the middle of the ring? It should always be cheating. I was watching old wrestling. I think I was watching the WrestleFest tapes. I don't know if you guys ever watched them shits on the network. I slowly make my way through a lot of stuff. So I watched WrestleFest 90 and WrestleFest 91. And there was not a match that a heel won without cheating. At least I don't think so. I don't think a heel won a single match on them cards without cheating. Maybe 1 or 2. It's probably a mismatch where, the heel was of such a higher level than the babyface that he didn't need to cheat. But most of the time, back in the day, heels cheated just to make the babyface look not too bad. We need to go back to that. We kind of need to go back to heels cheating. I would like that. That's what wrestling is. A bad guy has to cheat to win. I don't know where I think it's Japan, obviously, but I don't know where we got this idea where bad guys should be winning clean. I don't get it. Doesn't make sense to me. Let's get rid of that. Get that concept the fuck out of here. They should cheat more often than not, especially if the babyface has momentum. Cheat. All right, the Judgment Day versus Finn Balor, AJ Styles, and Liv Morgan. Now, this match, we're going to have to actually slow down and discuss some things because I saw people get very, very, very upset about the finish. But first, I want to talk about that CGI summon. Like, if you ever played Final Fantasy, you ever seen those summons like Shiva and Ifrit, where it's like this big monster thing? The Judgment Day had one of them shits as their CGI thing on their way to the ring. So it's like this gigantic cloaked figure with the Libra scales and everything. I was like, what the fuck is that? It was tough. That joint was hard. But I was like, man, that joint was like it's about to shoot a fireball at somebody and take all my hit points. I don't know what's going what the fuck? And of course, we got the usual suspects of people saying that Judgment Day is just House of Black and WWE, as if House of Black in any way created anything. It didn't create shit. It's just a current iteration of something that has been going on for a long, long time. Of cult-like organizations in wrestling. It's very rare that we get two at the same time, though. But I think WWE actually started Edge with the whole Brood thing before the House of Black was even formally formed. I think they were doing the Brood thing with Edge. This is last year. House of Black ain't been around for a year yet, has it? No, I don't think so. House of Black usually was just one guy. It was just Malachi Black before they added Brody King earlier this year. So, and they were doing the sort of mixed entrance for Edge at SummerSlam and Money in the Bank last year, wasn't they? Yeah, they were doing the mixed entrance for Edge, yeah. So they were teasing the Judgment Day. It was kind of going in this direction anyway. But what do I know? All right, so let's talk about this match now. So now Rhea Ripley is in trunks, and she looks good. She's wearing two shirts, though. Very weird. Almost like a Lita-like shirt with like the purple arm in it. Very odd, but I like the look. They've done something weird with Rhea where she's not as strong as she usually is. Like, they really give Liv Morgan a lot. For instance, there was this alley-oop Hurricanrana, which I really loved. Great spot where she gets kind of pushed up by AJ Styles and she gets the Hurricanrana on Rhea Ripley. It was amazing. But they have now started booking Rhea Ripley to basically get beat up by Liv Morgan. they're just having Liv Morgan have her way with Rhea Ripley now. Not thrilled with that, because it kind of flies in the face of not only the Eradicator concept they created for her, but the size difference says it all. Now, that being said, I do believe heels cheating and heels being weaker and heels shouldn't be as good a wrestler as the babyface. That's generally true. And I think we talked about it on the channel before, that the only time that it shouldn't be the case that the babyface is a better wrestler is if it's not realistic. If you're, Joe Schmo and you're wrestling heel Brock Lesnar, well, we know that Brock Lesnar in canon is a former UFC fighter, former NCAA champion. He's going to be a better wrestler than you. You're wrestling Kurt Angle. He's a better wrestler than you. You're wrestling Shelton Benjamin. He's a better grappler than you. Let's put it like that. That's, instead of saying wrestler, just say grappler. So you should never really win those grappling exchanges. But generally speaking in pro wrestling, that's the point of heels. They will be the not as good grapplers because they have to cheat. They have to lean on cheating. So Judgment Day, in this match, they leaned mostly on tactics. An observation before we get into the match itself. I noticed how all the men in this match are old as shit and the girls are young. Like, Liv Morgan's like 25 or something like that, 26, and same for like Rhea Ripley. But Edge is like 50. Like, AJ Styles is like 45. Balor's like 40. And Damian Priest is 40. Very odd. Very odd to pick young girls with old men. But it was a very interesting match. I like the big over-the-top rope topes. That was very sweet. That was a great spot where the babyface jumped over the top rope at the same time. Crowd went 8 for that. So the finish really kind of blew people's wigs off because Edge was beat. He was about to get double stomped by Finn Balor, and then Rhea Ripley stepped in the way. She just kind of stood there and blocked it off. And so Finn Balor couldn't jump over Rhea Ripley. He couldn't jump on Rhea Ripley. So he had to wait until Liv Morgan did something. So Liv Morgan jumped on Rhea Ripley's back, put her in a chokehold. They both go over the top rope. Finn Balor then tries to double stomp Edge. Edge at this point has gotten time to take a break. So he rolls out of the way. Spear, pin, 1, 2, 3. Edge pins Finn Balor. And the Judgment Day win. Great. I did see a lot of people complain. If the men can't hit the women, then this is a stupid finish and it's boring and it's not fair. Which, of course, they're heels. That's not supposed to be fair. But I wanted to sit down and talk about this for a second and give myself some time to breathe on this. I just read it wasn't a story. I think it might have been a video. I'm not sure if it was a video I read or an essay I read. A video I watched, rather, or essay I read. But they talk about discipline, creating limitations for your characters, and creating a natural limitation for your characters, creating weaknesses. In doing so, it forces you to be creative and to find ways around your character's weakness. For instance, Superman and Kryptonite. If Kryptonite is around, we know that Superman is going to become weaker. So now we have to create interesting ways for Superman to save the day despite Kryptonite. Despite the fact that Kryptonite exists. Somebody just pulling out a green rock and Superman getting weak is boring, it's corny, it's stupid. But people continue to do it. But here's the important thing that I learned in this thing. And that in writing, it is very important that you have limitations and you have discipline. This is what I meant. I think I said this before on this channel, that Chuck Jones, the guy who came up with the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote stories, the Looney Tunes, he had an unofficial Bible of how the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote's characters work. That, there's a certain way that the shorts work. And he didn't formally write them down, but since he wrote almost all of the Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner cartoons, he made sure to follow this journal that he had come up with personally. The Roadrunner can never be caught by Wile E. Coyote. The Roadrunner can never do anything offensive to Wile E. Coyote. In other words, Wile E. Coyote's plans have to blow up in his own face. He has to basically outsmart himself. And this was a way of creating expectations in the story, but it was also creating limitations in a way that there are things in a story that will not occur. They just will not occur. And you have to write around it. That means you have to forcefully, instead of breaking your own rules, you have to, not like Superman all of a sudden is not afraid of kryptonite, or he's not affected by kryptonite anymore because I think it's boring and it's stupid. So it just doesn't work when I write Superman. Like, okay, you're violating the code of Superman. It's stupid, right? So, and people who don't have discipline, that's what we see a lot in writing today, is people who don't have any discipline. I could get into that into more detail. When you look at something like in a Black Bolt, which is, people are talking about this a lot now, because of the Black Bolt and Doctor Strange speaking and blowing his own head up. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. But his character is based completely and totally on discipline. His ability he has to come up with ways to communicate without speaking, because his voice is his chief power. It's not his only power, but it's his chief power. Anybody he talks to, he can kill. So he has different things. He has low-level telepathy. He has a low-level telepathic connection to his wife, Medusa. He also learned sign language so that he can sign with people that he don't know. And that was a way of walking around the fact that Black Bolt's power can kill anybody that he talks to. What you see with an undisciplined writer, what they will do, the first thing they do when they write Black Bolt, they'll give him his voice back. It's just the same thing they do with Daredevil. The undisciplined writer, the first thing he will do is give Daredevil his sight back. Or they'll get rid of whatever is the problem. His Christianity, we'll get rid of it. And you just be like, what the fuck? You're destroying the very core of the character. It's a natural limitation. It's a limitation that was created for a reason. You can't write this character like you write all the other fucking characters. You can't do that. So what you started seeing is lazy writers will find ways of going around the core wound or the core problem by basically just giving it back. Like I say with all these people who think they're super smart, I'm going to be the one that's going to, Wile E. Coyote finally catches the Roadrunner. I'm smart. See, I figured it out. But then you're like, okay, now what's the next story? He killed him, he eat him, what else? How do you go from here? You outsmarted yourself. You killed your franchise. And I've seen people do that. People do this shit all the time. Like, there's silly questions that people ask. Who puts the gas in the Batmobile? Like, nobody cares about that shit, okay? You're overthinking it at that point. But there are certain things that cannot happen. And WWE, I said all of that shit to say this. WWE, in canon, men cannot attack women. So what they did was, they used Rhea Ripley in that way. Putting her in front of the men, she's constantly blocking the men off, and the men are frustrated. There's nothing they can do with this woman. Well, guess what? They have a natural help. That's what Liv Morgan is for. We have Liv. If Finn Balor could beat up Rhea Ripley, we wouldn't need Liv Morgan. So we wouldn't have Liv Morgan there in the first place. If they could beat up Rhea Ripley, there's no need for Liv Morgan. So we created another character, Liv Morgan. She's very necessary to help beat up Rhea Ripley, to get Rhea Ripley out of the way. But it also means that now the babyfaces have to get crafty, because this situation does get in the way. It's happened far too many times now that Rhea Ripley has been in the way. So now we have to get crafty. We have to start thinking. We have to start finding ways to get Rhea Ripley out of the way. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point she's handcuffed to the bottom rope, like they used to do with China, right? They used to find ways to get rid of China. Handcuff her to Sergeant Slaughter, throw powder in her eyes. You know, some other female wrestler or somebody, or some male wrestler would knock her down or get her out of the way. And, you know, that would be a way of nullifying China. That's basic storytelling. You would not be surprised. I say you wouldn't be surprised if you listen to this channel, because they do it a lot. That wrestling media does not understand the basic conceptualization of getting fucking heat. They don't understand basic getting heat. It's so fucking stupid. It's so fucking frustrating that these guys have large platforms to talk about this shit, and they're so fucking stupid. Or they're so used to the rules not mattering. And, you know, it's like the pesky tags and tag team matches. If we could just get rid of them and turn any tag team match into a tornado tag match. Again, that's lack of discipline. You have no respect for the rules, lack of discipline. You know, if you have no discipline in your writing, you're not writing anything. You're not sculpting anything. You know, part of what makes stories work, what makes sports work, is how you can manipulate around the rules. That's what every single game is about. It's about doing everything legal, and sometimes even going a little over the line if you have to. Basketball instituted, tactical fouls. Like, oh yeah, elbows and stuff like that shit's illegal. But then you started seeing tactical fouling. People will foul out on purpose, to keep somebody from going in to the basket or something like that. Foul the guy who can't shoot free throws. Tactical cheating. Creating unfairness in the roster. You will see that like in the Bad Boys back in the early days when basketball was tough. They would go out there and elbow a nigga in the ribs or something like that. It's cheating, face masks. Dudes would do it on the low in football. Grab a face mask a little bit. Shit talking. Get under a guy's skin. Get him really upset. All that kind of stuff is like unsportsmanlike conduct today. But it used to be tactical. People would do that on purpose. Because it was a way of going around the rules. It was about being crafty. It was part of being a good player. Part of being a good player sometimes meant being a little bit dirty. Michael Jordan would influence the referees. Like, I used to watch those old NBA, like I never watched the games, but I would see like those old NBA rewind episodes where they would show highlights, and sometimes they would fuck up and they would show Michael Jordan kind of pressuring a ref. And the ref would be like, "You're right, Mike. Maybe I should have called a foul, Mike. You're right. You're right." And you'd be like, "What the fuck?" Like, he's influencing the referees. It's like, yeah, he is. Because he can. And yeah, it's unfair. But he's fucking Michael Jordan. What are you going to do about it? Tell him he can't? But that's the kind of stuff that builds drama in sports. Is knowing that a guy like Michael Jordan can influence the referees if he wanted to and get favorable calls. They all do it. All the superstars on these teams, they all do it. Jordan ain't the only one. He's just the one that gets caught a lot. Now that they mic'd up, I don't think they probably do it as much today because everybody's wearing a mic now. Back then, this was like in the 90s, so it probably wasn't that many people wearing microphones at the time. But, you have these creative ways of creating limitations and creating unfairness, and you have to find ways around it. That's what a good writer does. They create natural limitations, and they're disciplined in those limitations. It would be easy to just break your limitation and have a man beat up a woman in this situation. But then you wouldn't get the pop when you have to do something later to get her out of the situation. Like handcuffing her to the bottom rope or throwing sand in her eyes or something like that. There's going to be something that's going to get Rhea Ripley out of the way one time, and it's not going to be Liv Morgan. But we just got to get there. I talked way too long on that. But I just really I really got not tight-assed about it, but I also was just watching videos about this and said to myself, you know what? It's an interesting thing that I want to share with my audience. And to me, that's very interesting because you see it in wrestling all the time. Jeff Jarrett always hits people with a guitar. Always. How do we get around hitting people with the guitar? Well, Sting would sometimes put up his baseball bat. So when he swings the guitar, Sting would stab it with his baseball bat. Or Sting would no-sell it. Or, other people would move and he'd hit somebody else. He'd be like, no, there's 100 ways around it. But first you have to establish the guitar shot for Jeff Jarrett, right? Or the Honky Tonk Man or whoever. You first establish the problem that the babyface has to deal with. And then you craft a way around it. Jake the Snake Roberts used to bring a snake to the ring all the time. Okay, I'm going to bring my own snake. I'm Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I'll bring a dragon to the ring. You craft ways around problems. And it's supposed to make you more over and make you seem smarter and make you craftier. Add elements to your character. Which is basic storytelling. I don't get it. All right, no holds barred. Happy Corbin versus Madcap Moss. This match was pretty straightforward. Madcap Moss wins. He used a fallaway slam onto the steps, which was absolutely wild shit, and I don't think I've ever even seen that before. Before he Pillmanized Corbin with the steel steps, I was like, damn, he killed that dude. That was wild, man. That was a wild finish. That Pillmanized with the steps is some crazy stuff. They did a stretcher spot. Heavens to Betsy, WWE didn't do a thing where an oxygen mask went over somebody's eyes. And maybe they should have done they should have done that for the love. Just for the love of the game. Put the oxygen mask over somebody's face. Madcap Moss is super over. People was asking the question whether Madcap Moss is really over or did people really just hate Happy Corbin. And I say lower column A, lower column B. Usually that's how it works. If you have any real heat as a heel, then yeah, people are definitely going to be partially because they hate you. But I really loved the fire and intensity of Madcap Moss, and I really loved that after the match he was like, Madcap ain't no joke, huh? And I was like, oh shit, he's serious about this. So Madcap Moss is going to be going forward. All right, interesting. Sixth match, United States title, Austin Theory defeats Mustafa Ali in a pretty good match. I knew I probably picked Ali to win because I thought maybe WWE would be generous. And then I heard about all this Austin Theory, John Cena stuff. And I was like, Austin Theory wrestling John Cena? What's the likelihood of that happening? And then I saw John Cena talk about it and say that Austin Theory needs an attitude adjustment. And I was like, oh shit. That means it's probably a good 30 to 40% that it might actually happen. That sucks for Mustafa Ali. And sure enough, it sucks for him. Another situation where the heel just won clean. Ali just did the job. Now, they did take all this time putting heat on Ali, so much heat on Ali, and then had him losing his hometown. WWE's hometown curse continues. People are getting so mad at that. It's amazing that people get so mad at that. That WWE has guys losing their hometown. It does deflate the audience. I think it did in this situation. But it also gives tremendous heat to Austin Theory. Now, I don't think he needed it, though. Like, he had been getting heat on Mustafa Ali for weeks now. He's pinned him numerous times. Like, he's been getting pinned since he came back. Like, if this was his first loss, I would say, oh, that sucks. But, he was on a roll, and they wanted to give Austin Theory a little something. But since, he pinned him last week, he pinned him on Monday, he's just been beating this guy to death for the last almost month already, so what's different? Just different city, I guess. But the match itself was fine. Ali's not a bad performer, but for fuck's sake. He's not getting much out of this Theory thing, and they really like Austin Theory for obvious reasons. It seems that he's going to be doing something going forward. But if Ali doesn't win that United States title, maybe they'll give him a last chance match, which I can see them doing. Is maybe doing a last chance match of some kind, and maybe they need to do something slick, like put Ali's hair on the line or something, like hair versus title or something, or career versus title or something, in order to finally put the belt on Ali. I do think he needs it, especially if Theory is about to be going to wrestle John Cena. Unless they're going to have John Cena wrestle for the U.S. title. Is that possible? Maybe Austin Theory does a United States Championship Open Challenge and Cena answers it. Maybe. That could be interesting. But Austin Theory's character isn't the kind of character that we even do an Open Challenge, So, but it sucks to be an Ali fan right now. But I'm not surprised by that shit. I'm not surprised by it at all. Not upset about it either. WWE doesn't give a fuck about Mustafa Ali. They never did. They're making him eat shit because he embarrassed them in public by all that complaining and stuff. So they're making him eat shit. But at least he's being featured. The tag team division is wide open. I don't understand why be an undercard babyface in the singles division when there's no tag teams. The tag team division is wide open. He had a good thing going with Mansoor. They were a decent tag team. I don't know. I just don't know where you can put Mustafa Ali if your plan is to go anywhere with Austin Theory. Unless he wins the title. That's your only opportunity to actually do anything with Ali. But at least it's not happening tonight. It ain't happening tonight. So that's it for Hell in a Cell. Very solid show. The main event delivered. The opening match was tremendous. 6-man tag, very fucking good. I loved all three of those matches. The 3 matches I was looking forward to the most actually delivered, I have to say. So the top 3 matches for me, they delivered. The triple threat match, I think, was a banger. 6-man tag, 6-person tag, however you want to put it, banger. The main event, uncomfortable. Probably should not have occurred. Definitely could have subbed out Cody, but they didn't. Still, it was very good. Cody put on just a masterclass out there. Seth Rollins, fabulous performer. So, I enjoyed the show. What about y'all? Like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace.